Hello and welcome to episode number 88 of The Pitcher or the Hitter, the podcast by the M-SABR Dynasty League for the M-SABR Dynasty League. I am Cam.
I'm Sahil.
And I just got a brand new phone today. A lot of fun, very exciting. Going to go well with my brand new Dynasty belt, which I got today as well.
Oh,
Big week for me getting shiny new things.
Shiny new things, yeah. Very glad to hear that you got a new phone. Although River phone was kind of funny. Funny in the sense that we had no context. So I guess for those of you who aren't around, we a lot of us gathered in Ann Arbor this weekend, and we're waiting to hear back from Cam at one point, and Cam took a little while to respond at one point. He's like, sorry, my phone's in a river. And we're like, what the hell? Like, how did his phone get in a river? Where was he in Ann Arbor with a river? It turns out that Cam went tubing, to which none of us knew with his girlfriend. Cam's
with his girlfriend, regular podcast listener Lexi Lee. Hi.
Yeah. Yeah, I didn't know how many people knew that your girlfriend's name was Lexi, but hi, Lexi.
I mean, she's been on the podcast before, so anyone listening would know.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, why didn't I? You know what? That's on me. If you're listening to this, Lexi, which I'm sure you will at some point, my apologies. Did you end up listening to the podcast on your way back to Manchester?
Absolutely not.
Oh, God. You mean you don't want to hear your voice for a second time on a podcast that you recorded and then have already listened to?
Yeah, I think I'd rather not.
Yeah, it's probably for the best. But no, it was a great weekend. Great getting to meet Lexi in person. Yeah, a great weekend for a lot of us in the league to get back together as we get here into the home stretch, including the trade deadline that's coming up. So the trade deadline is going to be on Friday. Let's see if I could do math. It's Friday the 19th. It's 11 days from the day of recording. And you took it upon yourself to make the first trade in August. The Liam Hendricks experience has agreed to trade Tyler Soderstrom to Bo with the Flow for Alex Wood, Victor Acosta, and Jake's 2100 third round pick. You and I had different opinions on this trade. This is kind of rare for us, but I'll let you talk first. It's your trade. Go for it, Cam.
Yes, so I wanted to get a starting pitcher. Alex Wood is someone I liked a lot. His numbers are really good this year, and I know he just got blown up by the Dodgers, but everyone gets blown up by the Dodgers, so I don't consider that a big deal or anything like that. His underlying numbers have looked really good. He's only 32. He really, with the exception of his half year with the Reds, has never been healthy and bad at the same time, and maybe the health is a worry. And maybe I've got a lot of pitchers where health is a worry, such as Clayton Kershaw, who just got hurt as well. But yeah, no, I think he's worth a gamble. Soderstrom's obviously a great prospect. He hasn't been hitting as well this year as last year, but he's still hitting pretty solidly. Definitely a big guy and difficult guy to part with. But I do like Victor Acosta a lot. I don't consider Victor Acosta to be that much worse than Soderstrom, especially with Acosta being further away from the majors, which is kind of what I need right now. He could be a high risk, high reward type of guy. Not that much worse than Soderstrom, although obviously Soderstrom does have that big bat. But in general, though, this is the type of trade I got to make. I need pitching. I'm in a win now mode. I've got so many prospects. I can definitely afford to part with a guy like Soderstrom for a lot of reasons, partly because I just got him for a third round pick to begin with. I took him in the 2021 draft in the third round. So he's not someone I gave up a lot to get. And I feel confident in replacing him in the future. I've been good at that. For example, when I traded away Kyle Harrison, he's proven to be a big loss. He's been good, but also I picked up Ricky Tiedemann as a free agent, just like I picked up Harrison as a free agent, and he's stepped right into that same spot and been a great pitching prospect. So I think, yeah, it's hard to part with a guy like Soderstrom, but I like my return, and I feel confident that I'm not going to miss Soderstrom too much, even if he does hit.
That's fair. I have two differing opinions on this. I think on one hand, one of the things I've consistently told you is that, hey, you have all these prospects, right? And you're in a win now mode. There's no reason you should be holding on to all these prospects. Part of the reason that you have prospects in a dynasty league is to be able to not only use them on your major league roster when they get promoted, but to also cash them in at the appropriate time when their value is at its peak, to be able to put together a successful winning team. So in that sense, I like the fact that you move Soderstrom to go and get that piece, especially when you do have depth at the two positions which Soderstrom might play, either a catcher where you have Adley and Jonah Heim at the moment in the majors, and at first base where you have guys like Vlad, you have Anthony Rizzo, and a number of other guys who could play first base. It is a deep position. I know Soderstrom's numbers have taken a little bit of a step back this year, but he has been better as of late. I'm really a big fan of his still. Baseball America came out with their updated list today, and he was featured as one of their risers. So his stock's going back up. One of the things I don't like about this trade, though, is the fact that to go and get to give up a guy like Tyler Soderstrom, I would expect that you would get maybe a little better return than Alex Wood. I'm not as sold on Alex Wood, the pitcher, as you are. I definitely have some concerns about the injuries. I'm not totally convinced that he's going to be able to stay healthy. 2020, he wasn't able to stay healthy. 2019, he wasn't really able to stay healthy. Even last year, he had 26 starts, but he only threw 180 or 138 and 2/3 innings. And he's only averaging just a smidge above 5 innings a start this year. So, and he is going to be 32 at the start of next season. So, I don't know if this is necessarily like a good upside swing. Maybe there's some depth here. I mean, it's a good depth guy, but I don't know if Soderstrom's the type of guy I want to give up for a depth guy. And I think the thing that bothers me the most now is you bench him against the Dodgers, understandable, but you also bench him against the Padres right now. And I'm fine with those decisions because those are two very good offenses, maybe the two best offenses in the NL or in all of baseball. And I benched Tyler Anderson against the Padres yesterday, and Tyler Anderson's having a fantastic season. Granted, he just went out and pitched 7 scoreless innings against them yesterday and proved me wrong. But if you're going to go and give up a top 50 prospect like Soderstrom, why do it for a guy that you're just going to let ride the bench like this? Like, I feel like you should go and have given him up for somebody who you're confident can start almost every single matchup or every single matchup, a set it and forget it type of guy. That's one of my big concerns with this trade for you.
I mean, there are like 5 starting pitchers in the entire league that I would start against the Dodgers. And none of them are available. And really, there aren't any starting pitchers available in general. You've seen the starting pitcher market. It just doesn't exist. So I feel like I got a guy that I can be happy with. And yeah, it could be seen as an overpay, but I think I'm in a position to make an overpay.
Yeah, and what I will say is, if you go on to win a championship this year, make a nice finals run, whatever, and Alex Wood's a big part of that, no problem. Sometimes you have to pay an expensive price, and you regret giving up the player because he becomes a young stud, but the guy that you got helped you win at that moment. Think like for me, the Yordan Alvarez for Zach Greinke deal I made year 1. Yordan's popping off right now, but I don't win a championship in year 3 without Greinke. So it's just how it goes sometimes. I'll be curious to see how this plays out. Maybe Alex Wood really ends the season strong and proves me wrong. And at the end of the day, Soderstrom is still a prospect. So we don't know what his career is going to look like. But I still think you gave up a little too much, and maybe there was a lesser prospect you could have given up, and maybe that would have made more sense. But time will tell. I don't think it was an egregious overpay or anything. Time will tell 78 years from now, because you acquired another 2100 third round pick.
Yeah, I did. Yes, and I've got 3 of them now.
Yeah, he has 3 of them. I mean, hopefully you're around in 2100 making that pick, but whoever owns that team in 2100 is going to have a dandy old time drafting in the 3rd round. But yeah, that was a lot of fun. I just want to give a quick shout out to that.
But yeah, speaking of time will tell, Nomar Mazara, the future MVP, has been cut, and only time will tell which team he ends up on and helps out. That's quite the transition. But yeah, I'm sure you feel very strongly about this cut as well.
Yeah, Nomar Mazara. I mean, look, Nomar performed pretty well for the Padres when the Padres had nobody. I don't think anybody really expected he was going to keep this up. It also wasn't like anything from a fantasy perspective that was like super dominant or anything. Like, yeah, he has a 321 OBP. That's okay. But he only has 2 home runs and 168 plate appearances, and his numbers are buoyed by a 345 BABIP. So Andrew should have cut him a while ago. Good for Andrew for like actually holding onto his convictions and keeping him like for as long as he did. Like, I think that's pretty funny. But like, yeah, it's Nomar is probably bought himself a spot on a major league roster somewhere next year with his performance, but like he should not be starting anywhere, let alone being fantasy relevant. But Nomar Mazara, baby. My God.
Nomar Mazara, baby.
Yeah, my God. All right. Any other notable ads, drops, additions, things we want to talk about here?
Not a whole lot. I cut Kyle Lewis this morning.
You did. Let's talk about that for a second, because that one's I mean, we're talking about the 2020 Rookie of the Year here. I know you needed to promote Kelenic, but what was the thinking behind that move?
It was hard, and Kyle Lewis is really slumping lately. He's gone into a deep slump. He's like 1 for his last 18 or something like that. And just hasn't been great since coming back from his 2nd injury of the year. I'm sure someone will pick him up. If not, I'd be happy to take him back if someone goes on the IL. I know actually after I cut him, a team did reach out without realizing I had cut him. So maybe that team will pick him up. But yeah, it just kind of felt like I needed to use that roster spot in a better way. I needed to get Kelenic on the roster. And Kyle Lewis was really the only person on my entire team I felt comfortable-ish cutting.
Yeah, that makes sense. I wonder if you could have gotten a 2nd or 3rd round pick for him. Maybe if you would have had another day or 2 to shop him. I think you probably could have found a suitor. I just
didn't have time.
Yeah, you didn't have the time. I also don't think it is the end of the world, because I think there is a distinct possibility you wouldn't have found a suitor. And I also do think it was time. He's not even really playing every day anyway. And, it's the type of thing you can stomach if you're, Anthony or EBO. You don't have that luxury. So yeah, it makes sense. Yeah, the only other notable transaction here was Ian Anderson getting demoted to AAA. I thought was particularly interesting, and I'm curious to see what Yuki ends up doing with him, because Yuki's been really high on him for a while. I know, like before last season, I tried to trade for him, and he was like close to untouchable for Yuki. So Yuki's patched together one of the more unexpected rotations this year with the likes of Drew Rasmussen, Cal Quantrill, Zach Plesac, Paul Blackburn, Miles Mikolas, and Johnny Cueto. That's been like competent enough for him to stay in the playoff hunt. And I'm really curious if Ian Anderson getting demoted kind of spurs a move from him. But yeah, I just wanted to mention that because that was I knew he was struggling, but I wasn't expecting the Briefs to demote him like they did.
Yeah, do you think Yuki's a buyer at the deadline?
Ooh. See, it's interesting.
He currently holds the 6th seed.
So he currently owns the 6th seed. And you actually, in honor of Baseball America's release list today, after after Gunnar and Churio were somehow 1-2. God bless it. Could you, as an aside, could you imagine even like a year ago ever saying that like or ever thinking that I would own the top 2 prospects on any prospect list that ever came out ever?
Yeah, man.
I mean, I am full campaigning this. My God, I think I might be the new prospect king, but it's actually Yuki, because Yuki. Let me see if I can pull up the number you typed in. Yuki is 7 of the top 26 prospects. So Yuki, on one hand, has the prospect capital to really just go and like make a move if he wants to. On the other hand, Yuki, you could argue he's overperformed. He doesn't have the most impressive team. Is an ad or two really going to make that much of a difference? Especially even if he makes the playoffs, he's not necessarily a favorite. And is he better off just waiting for those prospects to develop? And maybe strike when he has a more impressive group of assets at the major league level. I don't know the answer. What do you think the answer is to that?
I don't know. It's tough. He has a very top-heavy farm system. He does have a lot of those guys who are great, such as Taj Bradley, Gabriel Moreno, Curtis Mead,
Corbin Carroll,
Kyle Harrison, and then of course his shortstops Meyer,
Robert Hassel.
Robert Hassel.
Yeah.
But he's also got some guys that wouldn't really be on a lot of rosters. I don't know much about Dre Jameson. I don't know much about Mason Montgomery, and then someone like say Asa Lacy has kind of fallen off a lot. So he could stand to make his farm system deeper. And if he were to sell at the deadline, say sell a starting pitcher, like for example Paul Blackburn or one of those other guys, he could make himself the undisputed #1 farm system in the league. I don't know. I guess it depends. I think this year, and now that he's dropped in the roto behind Andrew, I think it's looking more and more like the first 7 or 8 weeks were 10 weeks or so were kind of a fluke. And he could really, I don't know. I want to say stay put is the right answer, but if he were to sell, he could get some good pieces in return. But on the other hand, why would you want to sell when you're the 6th seed? But on the other hand, I sold heavily when I was the 7th seed in 2019, and that helped a ton. But also we didn't sell heavily completely. We bought Zach Wheeler and Walker Buehler that year. We made future sighted moves. So maybe the idea is to get some younger guys, trade for some younger major league ready guys, and try to win next year is kind of what I'm going for, but not necessarily giving up prospects, but maybe trading older major leaguers for younger major leaguers.
Well, that makes sense, and he does have a lot of those. So if you look at this, right, like Kenley Jansen is 35, 36 at this point, right? There's no reason Yuki shouldn't trade him. David Robertson's even older than that. Somebody starters. Miles Mikolas is in his mid-30s, right? There's no reason that Yuki should be holding on to him. He's having a career year. He's got a not terrible group of bats here, like young bats, headlined by like Austin Riley, Dansby Swanson, Bryce Harper, Brandon Lau, Miso Horner, um, Tyler Stevenson. So like the offensive talent is there and it's young. He just needs some young pitching in there, and he's able to kind of cobble it together this year with some saves guys really leading the way. But yeah, I think you're right. He could sell some of these short-term pitchers and maybe pick up a young pitcher who maybe struggled a little bit and take the gamble, or one who's in the lower minors, something like that.
Yeah, there's a world where Yuki turns himself into a top 5 team next year if he makes some good moves at the deadline. Although you could say that about just about every team except the Bellies.
Do you think Yuki's going to do that though? Because remember last year, I think the one line I said so many times about Yuki was if he just makes the right deals at the deadline, he could speed up this rebuild by like 2 years. And
Yeah, no, we were saying the entire season that he needs to trade Buster Posey, and he didn't trade Buster Posey, and then he got nothing for Buster Posey when he retired.
yeah, and on the flip side, though, he traded Real Muto in the offseason after we said he really needed to trade Real Muto, and Kirilloff had wrist surgery yesterday. He's out for the year. So
yeah, there's that too. If Kirilloff had hit, his team would be in even better shape. But yeah, I don't know. He's in an interesting spot for sure.
yeah, I'll say about Kirilloff that's one of those where the process was right. It's just the actual result was wrong, and that just happens sometimes. But yeah, we'll see about Yuki. We'll see about this playoff race as a whole. I mean, it's really tight. This is the tightest it's been in years. Up top,
Yeah, we got a 3-way tie for third right now.
There's a 3-way tie for third, and 5 teams are within a game and a half. And we saw some shuffling as to who the top 2 seeds are, who's getting the buys. Jake dropped out. You moved up in the standings. I moved up in the standings, but let's talk about your matchup. This is pretty significant. You somehow entering this week had not beaten a single playoff team all year.
With the exception of Yuki.
With the exception of Yuki. You had some ties against some very formidable opponents, but you had not pulled out a win, including the heartbreaker against me a couple weeks ago. But you pull out a huge win against Jake this week, 6-5-1. It looked like you were going to run away with it early in the week and ended up getting close. But you win, and now you and Jake have identical records at 9-4-3. I believe you split the season series 1-1, right?
We did, and we both matchups were a 6-5-1 matchup, which means it goes to the third tiebreaker, which is Roto,
which you currently possess, correct?
Mm-hmm. Correct.
So you are currently the 3 seed.
That is correct.
Oh man. Setting ourselves up for a potential me VU matchup in the semis if things hold. But let's not jump too far ahead of ourselves. Talk about this matchup.
Yeah, so I another incredible week for my offense. That's 4 weeks in a row where my offense was just firing on all cylinders. Especially in particular the first 2 or 3 days of the matchup, I was just on fire. I cooled off a little bit the rest of the week, but still a solid week. I even stole 5 bases, which is not something I normally do. And I beat a version of Jake's team that was firing on all cylinders. He didn't have a down week. The OBP was a little low, but he pitched really well. He scored 50 runs. He hit 17 doubles, drove in a whole lot of runs. So I beat a good team that was having a good week, and that's big for me. I would have loved to hit a few more homers, but that's not a huge deal. I only drove in 39 runs, which isn't great, but I always kind of feel when I talk about any team, really, 39 runs, I'll say, oh, this team, or 39 RBI, I'll say, oh, this team had a bad RBI week. 40 RBI, I'll say, hey, this team had a good RBI week. So I guess I kind of had an okay RBI week. But regardless, I think this one definitely got close for comfort, and maybe I'm glad I didn't have a phone that was working super well for the last couple days. Although maybe if I did, I would have maybe moved some bats around, gotten an extra homer or something out of that. But it didn't end up mattering. Although an extra homer would give me the second tiebreaker instead of worrying about Roto. I don't know. On the whole, no regrets. Happy to have pulled out a win against Jake. I have not, prior to this, I had not beaten Jake's team since 2019. I don't know if I've beaten this team while Jake was an owner.
Oh damn, I didn't
I could take a
remember
look. Yeah, I could take a look. I'm not 100% sure when Jake joined. I know he was there for the 2020 draft, but I think he was pretty new to the team at that point. Either way, yeah, it was Clayton and Ryan. I'm looking at my scoreboard here just to see when the most recent time I beat this team was, because they were the only team I didn't beat in 2021. And then I lost my first matchup against them this year. Is this the Life of Otto? Was this team formerly
Yep.
the Life of Otto?
Yep, they were the Life of Otto.
Okay, so I beat them week 21 of 2019. That's right. I was tanking hardcore at the moment, and I still managed to hit 20 homers, 54 RBI, and a 365 OBP.
Damn.
Even though I was, that was like I was benching everyone, but you made me stop benching all my guys, and then that happened.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that was.
But anyway, it's been close to 3 calendar years since I've beaten this team. Maybe Jake was a member, maybe not. But either way, I've shown that I can do it. I've shown that I can beat a very good team, which is always good to know. Hopefully, I can stay ahead of Jake the remainder of the season. He's down at 4 after being top 2 for most of the way. But he doesn't have a lot to worry about in general. Just kind of was unlucky to have faced me this week. In my matchup MVP, I will go with Adley. I got to go with Adley Rushman. He didn't hit any homers, but he hit 4 doubles, walked 8 times, good for a 571 OBP. He played really great. Yeah, loved the output from him. Honorable mention. Ooh, no, I'm going to change my mind. Adley gets honorable mention. Francisco Lindor wins matchup MVP. Homers and doubles weren't super high, but he had a great on base. He drove in 7 runs, scored 9. He did his 2 homers actually were tied for the most on my team. I think Lindor was great, and so was Adley.
There you go. Yeah, huge win for you. I mean, a loss that would have kicked you out into the 5 seed, and I think would have made it not impossible, but really hard for you to have a shot to even get a bye. You have kept yourself right in the thick of that race. I don't think you'll have, any issues sticking around that race over the next couple of weeks. We'll see if you can actually secure a bye, but this was the one you needed to have. I think this is more of a must win for you than Jake, and you pulled it off. So good for your team. Let's where do we want to go next with this? You know what? There was some history set this week. Let's go there. History set twice. Ruthvik and Nick beat Daniel and Matt 12-0 in a matchup that featured 11 holds for Ruthvik and Nick. 11 beats the previous record of 10 that was jointly owned by myself and EBO. We had both set it last year. Interestingly, EBO also set the holds record against the Bellies. But yeah, Ruthvik won 12-0, but it was a very weak 12-0 win. As you very nicely went back and researched this, Ruthvik won, had the second fewest home runs, the second fewest runs, the second lowest OBP, and the third fewest RBI, and he won all 4 categories. What do we think about this?
Yeah, that's just kind of unfathomable. Third worst ERA also. Ruthvik's team just kind of sucked this week outside of holds and strikeouts, and whip. They had a good whip. Horrible offensive week, but they faced a team that had a horrible offensive week. They would have lost to most teams, but not only did they win this week, they 12-0'd their opponent.
Yeah, this is like, look, any 12-0 win is one to be proud of, but man, I mean, talk about bottom of the barrel 12-0 win. Let's look at a bigger picture for Ruthvik and Nick. I mean, they are, tied with Yuki right now. I believe Yuki owns the tiebreaker, so Ruthvik and Nick are outside of the playoffs. We asked this question for Yuki, but let's ask this for Ruthvik and Nick. Are you buying? Are you selling? Are you holding? What's your opinion of this team?
I think this team needs to make some sort of move. I think holding, I wouldn't say holding, but I think they need offense. And I think I could be a good trade fit for them in the sense that if they traded me a better bat for 2 or 3 of my solid bats, like say they traded me Alex Bregman for 2 good but not great bats, I think that would be a win-win for both teams. They get more depth in their lineup, and I get a star who can push me over the top. This team is just seriously lacking depth, I think, and that's kind of been an issue that we've continued to talk about the entire time that we've had a podcast. This team needs depth. They're starting too many guys who just aren't very good. And it showed this week, but it didn't hurt them this week though. But it showed just a horrible offensive week that they managed to get away with because the team they were facing was somehow worse. They just need depth. That's all.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think you're right. This offense is not particularly good. There are some players that you look at and you're like, yeah, they're studs, right? Offensive Devers, and Acuna should be, one of the better offenses you would think. And then you look at the rest of this lineup and it's not really too inspiring. I mean, like, yeah, there are guys having solid seasons. Like Jeff McNeil is having a solid season, right? But he has 6 home runs and 2 stolen bases, right? That's not carrying him. JP Crawford, solid season, but 5 home runs, 3 stolen bases. Ian Happ, 9 home runs, 6 stolen bases. Dylan Carlson, 7 home runs, 4 stolen bases. Jaron Duran, in addition to being awful at the OBP, 2 home runs, 7 stolen bases. I mean, those numbers are not going to cut it. For you to consistently win those categories each week, you want to see those numbers more in the double digits. None of those numbers I read were in the double digits. It's I mean, I can keep going on. There's more of these. I don't know what the solution is for them necessarily. I mean, I think you're right. They definitely need more offensive depth, but I wonder if this team is just kind of stagnated. Like from when Ruthvik took over this team, like at the end of year 1 to like year 3, I thought this was the most improved team in the league from that point. Over that time period, but it's almost like Ruthvik hasn't really done much to improve the team or make the team worse since then. Like, yeah, he's acquired a couple of other starting pitchers, that have really helped. Getting Joe Musgrove's helped, right? There's a lot of depth in this rotation, but we keep saying over and over again that they can't hit. If he's not going to improve the offense, it's going to limit the ceiling, and the team's going to stagnate. I think we're seeing this play out live here. I don't know what the solution is. In the sense that I don't think there's a short-term fix. I don't think there's an obvious fix. And I almost wonder if a bold move such as, trading away a Musgrove, trading away a Logan Webb, getting an elite hitter might be the right decision. To kind of balance things out without taking too much away from the pitching staff. Or low key, if Ruthvik really decided to blow things up, kind of, Like if he really didn't, and I don't think he would, but I think an argument can be made that this team just doesn't have what it takes on the roster right now to really be able to jump into the upper tier. Maybe it's time to consider kind of a soft rebuild or like a retool. You traded DeGrom. As much as it would hurt Ruthvik, he is getting older. This is probably the peak of his value. Trade DeGrom or trade, Musgrove, trade Ty France, trade Alex Bregman and maybe start over a little bit.
Yeah, that's something he could do. That'd definitely be hard. And we've spent this whole time talking about how much this team sucks. They did just win 12-0. We should celebrate that a little bit. This has only happened, let's see here, 1, 2, 3, 6 times in league history. And the most recent time it happened was this time last year, and they got 12-0'd. But so we should celebrate that a little bit. And they did just get Jacob deGrom back, and he was phenomenal this week. He didn't get any quality starts because he didn't pitch deep enough into either of the games, but he is still the matchup MVP, I'll say, because he struck out 18 guys in 10 2/3 innings with an 0.47 whip. He was phenomenal. Well done, Jacob deGrom. I could maybe see it making sense for them to trade him. But it's not going to happen. He's also not the type of guy you give up, especially if you're a Mets fan.
Yeah, and look, to be clear, I feel like we're painting kind of a negative picture here, but I think it's less about feeling super negative about their team and more just kind of sizing up the competition they have around them and just being like, yeah, some of these offensive pieces are solid offensive pieces, but there needs to be more star power and depth around it. So it's not that the foundation of this team is fundamentally flawed. I mean, they have Acuna, they have Devers, Bregman, DeGrom, Musgrove, Bieber. But maybe there's some work that needs to be done, and then the question becomes, is it worth it? Kind of the same thing we debated with Yuki.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But yeah, what is the next matchup we want to talk about?
Why don't we go right down the line here in terms of the matchups scores from we started at the 12-0 win. Let's go to the 11-1 win. Anthony crushed EBO 11-1. Fantastic pitching week for Anthony. 7 quality starts, 5 saves, 4 holds, 80 Ks, a 188 ERA to go to the .93 whip. Offensively wasn't anything special, but it was enough to win 5 out of 6 categories from EBO. EBO only 1 steals. 11-1 win for Anthony. What are your thoughts on this, Cam?
Yeah, I think Anthony's pitchers looked great, particularly Kevin Gausman, who I'm going to name matchup MVP in hopes that he'll trade him to me. But also because he went 14 shutout innings with 15 Ks and an 0.57 whip. Just an excellent week for Gausman, continuing an excellent season. But Anthony also got great weeks from Christian Javier and Andrew Heaney. Braxton Garrett as well, although he did start against the Reds, so that doesn't really count. But
Braxton Garrett's been really good recently.
He has. No, he's been a great pickup for Anthony. He added him from his minor league roster on July 14th. Maybe you could say he waited a little long for that, but he has been terrific this year, and he's super young. And just another guy you can add along with Manoah into what could be, and Anthony's hoping could be, a great rotation for years to come. Up and coming rotation for sure. But yeah, no, he had a great pitching week, and these guys really proved it this week. Hitting wise, it was kind of a mediocre week. The runs weren't there. 15 doubles is okay, but nothing else wowed me. EBO, on the other hand, just didn't have it. They only drove in 26 runs, had an OBP below 300, 8 homers. And then pitching wise, the rate stats were fine, but not good enough to win, and certainly not enough quantity. And most teams wouldn't have beaten Anthony quantity wise. He had 80 Ks and 7 quality starts, but EBO didn't really put up a fight at all in really any aspect of this matchup. Some of the hitting categories were close. It wouldn't have really taken a lot to flip homers and on base and runs, but the way Anthony pitched, EBO had no chance.
Yeah, I think it's very fair. A very fair analysis. I don't really have anything else to add here. I think Anthony is pretty clearly the ninth best team in this league, which really doesn't mean much. But I think he's better kind of than that conglomerate at the bottom there of EBO, and Daniel and Matt and Alex and Zach, who are kind of competing for those last few spots and have traded away significant pieces from their roster over the past few months, whereas Anthony really has not done that. So, I think Anthony just has a little more talent than some of these guys. And I expect him to win matchups against teams like EBO.
Yeah, I'd say that's fair.
Yeah. Anything else you'd like to say? Or are we ready for the next matchup?
No, let's move on. The one I wanted to talk about next was Conor v. Yuki. Conor has put together, and we've talked about him being an up and down team. He'll have a great week and then he'll have a terrible week, but he's put together 3 or so great weeks in a row. And this was a great week, all around, against a team that's currently in the playoffs too, mind you. Conor scored 49 runs, 51 ribbies, 19 homers, good on base percentage, and good pitching too, especially in the rate stats, as he normally does, as this team is known to do. Nothing to complain about on Conor's end besides maybe the bullpen, but that's nitpicky. He won 9-1. Conor's team is kind of coming into form here. He's looking like he'll be in the 5 spot as of now, but I'm kind of becoming more and more scared to face him.
Yeah, I think Conor has a pretty solid roster here. He's been pretty aggressive in acquiring upgrades. He has some pieces who have just been really consistently solid for him all year. Paul Goldschmidt has been an awesome acquisition. Some of the pieces in his rotation are really turning it around. He got Verlander, obviously, but Urquidy's been a great free agent pickup for him. I'm really kicking myself for dropping him right now because Urquidy's been great ever since a rough start to the year. Robbie Reyes turned it around, -2 rough starts against Houston recently. Tristan McKenzie's in the top 20 for the player rater for starting pitcher. So Conor low key has a lot of really solid pieces here. He's only a half game out of a bye too. I don't think Conor's going to end up getting a bye when it's all said and done. I think of the 4 non-Erik teams that are within a half game of each other right now competing for that bye, I think that Conor's the least likely to get it. But this isn't a team I want to face in the playoffs. I agree with you. And, while Conor maybe doesn't have the prospect capital that say you or me or Jake or Erik do to make some moves at the trade deadline to really bolster the team. I think Conor, I wouldn't be surprised if he found a way to make a significant move. And, he's been really aggressive recently, and I think it could serve him well.
Yeah, I mean, the story of Conor's team last year was he got super aggressive at the trade deadline, and it paid off immensely. Robbie Ray especially carrying his team through the playoffs all the way to the finals. And I could see him. He really doesn't have the prospect depth anymore. and his one, he's had a few breakout prospects per se. I know like Gordon Graceffo has jumped up a couple lists, and Diego Cartaya is great, and I've seen Colson Montgomery crack a few top 100s, but he really doesn't have the prospect capital he did last year, especially after trading away Ezekiel Tovar early in the year. His big success story, trading him and Jorge Polanco for Justin Verlander, which, especially given the return Polanco got, that's not a deal I'm loving for Conor at the moment. But Conor makes a lot of deals that I don't like that end up working out really well for him. And maybe Verlander, well, he's been terrific this year too. Oh my God. I knew he was good, but oh my God.
No, Verlander is absolutely insane, and like, yeah, Tovar's good, and yeah, Polanco's good, but like, if Verlander, Robbie Ray's Connor to the finals, like, you're gonna have a hard
Verlander
time
hasn't
saying a trade's not worth it.
Verlander hasn't given up more than one run since June 18th in a start.
No, he is maybe next to Dylan Cease. I think you could argue that Justin Verlander has been the most impressive pitcher in the AL this year. That AL Cy Young race is going to be insane between those two.
And McClanahan.
Oh,
And Gosman.
how did I forget McClanahan? uh, maybe I'm a little down on McClanahan after watching him get Darvish live this weekend, but yeah, I mean, that's God, the AL Cy Young race is going to be insane.
It is, and as good as Verlander is, and he had a good start this week, I'm going to give Connor's matchup MVP to Rhys Hoskins, who hit 4 homers, drove in 6 runs, and scored 7 times to go with a 455 on base. He was terrific. Carried Connor's bats this week, and those bats were good this week.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Great week for Rhys Hoskins. As for Yuki briefly, I know we just talked a lot about him in a trade deadline context, but I'll talk about him here briefly for what this means for him in a playoff hunt. This is a real bummer. We talked last week, kind of at the end of the episode, how this was a really big matchup for him because if he was able to pull off a dub, he could really separate himself from Ruthvik, really take command of that 6 seed, and maybe even narrow the gap a bit with some of the teams above him and maybe take the 5th seed, the 4th seed. As it stands right now, he's still tied with Ruthvik. He still owns the tiebreaker over Ruthvik. I don't think either team is playing particularly well at the moment. And it's still up for grabs here, but Yuki really missed a big opportunity here to really seize a spot. So we'll see if he can bounce back next week. But yeah, this just was not a particularly impressive performance by Yuki.
Yeah, and it wasn't a bad week per se. He was just kind of average. Had an average RBI total and doubles and runs, and the pitching rate stats were kind of average. It was all kind of average for Yuki.
Right, but average would be Daniel and Matt, like Ruthvik did. Average is not going to be everybody who's ranked above Yuki or who has a better record than Yuki right now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
that's true.
Yeah.
But yeah, want to move on to the next matchup. We've got 2 left. Do you want to talk about yours?
Oh, let's save the best for last. What's the what's the other matchup we haven't talked about?
We got Erik. So let's talk about yours then if we want to save the best for last.
Oh, damn. Shots fired after I was number 1 in the roto today. Yeah, that's fine. You know what? We'll talk about me now. Yeah, I beat Alex 10-2. This is my second 10 category win over Alex over the past month or so. Trying to pull up the stats here, but here we go. My team has just been for as good as Erik's team has been the entirety of the year. I think my team has been the best team over the last 6 weeks or so. I had a very inconsistent start to the season. I've been 5-1 over the last 6 weeks. There's a loss to Jake in there, but there's also wins against you. There's a win against Ruthvik in there. 2 10 category wins. My pitching is firing on all cylinders. The offense is firing on all cylinders. That's 7 quality starts and 10 starts last week. 257 ERA, 111 whip. 67 runs. It came close to setting the runs record, which was 71 by Erik a couple years back. 22 doubles, 17 homers, 57 ribbies, all fantastic. A 361 OBP was among the leaders this week, 5 steals. I feel really good about the team. Castellanos and Muncy are starting to heat up, which they've been in slumps for most of the year. If those guys can heat up along with the pieces I have, that offense is going to be a lot of fun for me to manage. And not to mention Tatis is on his way back. Perfect timing too. I mean, he started his rehab assignment. I played Daniel and Matt this week, but then I have 3 games against 3 playoff teams to end the season. And it looks like Tatis is going to be back, if not for the entirety of all 3 matchups, for most of those matchups. I've heard August 19th being thrown around as a potential day. That's the first game of a homestand for the Padres. That would be huge. God, this was the team I thought I had entering the season. And maybe they're actually even a little exceeding my expectations. And I'm incredibly excited about this. The only nitpicky thing I'll say is kind of the bullpen. I haven't been racking up as many holds recently. That's something I'm definitely looking into. But my roster's been so healthy, I haven't had a lot of spots to stream holds. So as for Alex, he actually had a pretty solid offensive week. He came just short in doubles, home runs, and ribbies. Top me in steals, but the OBP just wasn't there. He wasn't able to keep up at the pitching rate categories. And my pitching staff from a quality perspective is better than his, and it showed. Although kudos to him because the matchup was closer than the score indicated. He falls to 211-3, but I still think there's a lot of solid pieces there on that roster.
Yeah, I think there are. But your team, I don't know if I've ever seen as good of an all-around week as this. Your team, you nitpick the holds, and I'll nitpick the strikeouts. You didn't strike out very many batters this week, considering you had 10 starts. But other than that, you dominated. Your hitting was you scored 67 runs, drove in 57. But unlike my weeks where I hit like that, you posted a sub-3 ERA.
And I left 7 scoreless innings of Tyler Anderson on my bench yesterday too. Like it's could have been even better. Maybe would have had a sub-2 ERA.
Man, that is true. But either way, you didn't need it really. You would have beaten me 9-2-1, and I had a great week. You would have beaten Conor 8-3-1, and Conor had a great week. You were just a cut above everyone else. You've leapfrogged everyone in Roto, despite not being particularly close to the top 3 weeks ago. You've leapfrogged us all, and now there's a gap after you, and you've done it in such a short time. I'm impressed with your team right now.
I love the kind words about my team, but here's a question I have for you. So I think the last time you did the Roto, I was 3rd or 2nd, but there's still a little bit of a gap between the top.
You were 3rd, and me and Erik were tied for 1st the previous time.
Right. So there's still a little gap there. I'm now 10 points above Erik in the Roto, and I'm now 5.5 above you. Do you think? I know that Erik is still the 1 seed. I know he's a game above me. He swept me. If you're ranking the teams right now for this moment to the rest of the season, who do you have up top between me, you, and Erik?
I think Erik is still on top of my power rankings. And I think he's going to remain on top just because you don't get the chance to play him. But also, I could definitely see you dropping one of your matchups against either Conor or Jake, which you have week 18 and week 19. Um, so I think Erik has the advantage there, and although he does have to face me, and I've been over the past several weeks been playing better than he has. Um, I don't know. I still give him the advantage. He hasn't done anything to be knocked off of the top spot just yet. But I'll go you second and me third.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'd agree with that order. I think that Eric's, I think my team has taken it up a notch the last 6 weeks, but it's still a 6 week period over that's been 16 weeks of the season. I can't just pretend that the first 10 weeks didn't exist. And it's not like Eric's team is played bad the last 6 weeks. Like he's been playing pretty solid. There's a random loss to EBO in there. And lost to Jake, but I also lost to Jake. It's a very quality team. So yeah, I don't think he's necessarily done anything to lose the top spot. I know that the lead that he has 4-1 seed has narrowed a bit. It looked like he was going to run away with it. Now that's not the case. What I will say if I'm Erik though is that I'm a lot worried about the competition now in terms of the quality and the way that they are playing than I would have been 2 months ago.
Yeah, the gap has narrowed a lot for
Yeah.
sure. And and we can use that as a transition to start talking about his matchup.
Yeah.
First and foremost, before we do that, I didn't name your matchup MVP, but it is Pete Alonso. He had a 472 on base, and he drove in 10 runs, scoring 8 while hitting 3 homers. Easy pick, I think, for your team. But let's talk about Erik's team now. We've talked about him not playing well in a lot of games, but that wasn't the case this week. Erik had a very good week. And sure, sure you could say that you and I had better weeks, but you don't need to do that right now because things could have been different if we were playing him. And there's not really anything to complain about on Erik's end other than the on base percentage. He scored a bunch of runs, drove in 53, struck out a lot of guys with solid pitching rate stats. And he had a pretty comfortable win over Andrew, who didn't play badly either. At least hitting wise, he did have a bad pitching week though.
Yeah. No, this is one that Erik was supposed to win. Erik wins it. He pulls it out. A nice, solid victory. I think you're right. OBP's the only thing that really concerns me. Um, but let me ask you this. So Erik has a 302 OBP this week, so barely above 300, and he's coming off a week last week where he had the 267 OBP. And I know that he's been able to do relatively well in the other offensive categories given that low OBP the past 2 weeks, but are you concerned at all about his OBP, or do you just think this is part of the ebbs and flows of the season and you think he's going to be fine?
That's a good question. I mean, it happens. Teams fluctuate in OBP. I know my OBP was disturbingly low earlier in the year, and I was able to turn it around. But Erik has never, at any point, been a high on base percentage team, and at some point, we've said that at some point it's going to hurt the rest of his offense. But it really, at least this week, it didn't. We'll see how it looks in a playoff matchup. It's a hard category to punt because it's one that's really influenced by a lot of the other categories. You're not going to score very many runs if you're not getting on base. So you could worry about that, but on the other hand, he always finds a way to make it work,
Yeah, absolutely. For reference, because I think this is interesting. Erik is the second lowest OBP in the league, at a 3.124. Only Anthony is a lower OBP. The next lowest OBP of any current playoff team is 10 points higher than Erik is Conor with the 3.22.4. Erik is middle in the pack in runs and doubles. He's fifth in both. But third in home runs and second in ribbies, as well as second in steals. So yeah, he does make it work in these other categories, even if it's not necessarily working in the OBP, and maybe that's just the way that his team's gonna play it. But yeah, let's talk about Andrew briefly. You know, he's playing Erik. That's a hard matchup. It's the home runs were not particularly great, but the other offensive stats were fine. The pitching really didn't do him any favors this week. What are you doing if you're Andrew? Because I think Andrew maybe has an outside shot at the playoffs, but I doubt it. He's a game and a half back with 4 games left. But at the same time, I don't think he has a ton of pieces for him to sell necessarily. And some of the pieces that he could potentially sell, I think, are some that could really help him for next year when I think that his window's really opening.
Yeah, I don't know. I think, and his farm system has kind of taken a hit this year. A lot of guys haven't progressed the way we'd like them to. So maybe that's a thing where he could restock that farm a little bit. I don't know. I think Andrews. Well, he has jumped Yuki in the roto, so there is something to be said for that. But I don't know. I think I wouldn't be surprised. Well, I'd be surprised, but I wouldn't be shocked in the way that I would for some other teams if Andrew made a run to the playoffs. He does have to go through me. He faces me in a couple weeks. He's also, other than that, though, he faces the 2 arguably worst teams in the league in the final 2 weeks. And then he's got Yuki now, and if he can beat Yuki here, that'll be huge for his chances. So I guess it's certainly possible schedule-wise that he could say he goes 3-1 down the stretch. I could see that being enough to get him in the playoffs.
Yeah, I could definitely see that too. It wouldn't. I don't think I call it a particularly likely scenario, but I think that there definitely is a path for him to make it. I'm not counting on it. I think if I'm Andrew, I'm probably holding at the deadline while still kind of looking at future moves. They basically remind me of what the Orioles are doing right now, where like the Orioles are just sitting outside the playoff hunt. Yeah, like they could in theory make a push, but why make a push if it's going to really affect the next 5 years when the window really is? And you know what? I think Andrew's sitting pretty right now. I don't think he needs to make any drastic changes. So, but with that, we have discussed all the matchups, I believe. Is there anything you wanted to add before we turn to our matchups to watch?
Yeah, so matchup MVP for this one is gotta be Max Scherzer. He had a pair of quality starts. He had 16 strikeouts, an ERA of 132, a WHIP of 088. What's interesting about that is that makes 4 out of the 6 matchup MVPs New York Mets. Lindor was a matchup MVP. DeGrom, Pete Alonso, and Max Scherzer all were MVP of their respective matches. They all had a great week, and the Mets had a great week. And now they get to face the Reds, so they'll have another good week.
Oh yeah. Good for the Mets. That NL East race is going to be really interesting. And speaking of interesting races, I think some of the matchups this week are really going to help for the playoff on here. We were talking about Yuki and Andrew. Yuki and Andrew play each other this week.
Yeah, I think that's a fun matchup to watch. I know just with what this could do for the standings, Andrew is still a game and a half behind Yuki. They're in the Yuki's in the 6th spot, Andrew's in the 8th spot, but a win right here, especially considering that Andrew plays 2 really bad teams in the final 2 weeks of the season. This is this is a must-win for Andrew. I think if he wins, he's got a real shot at the playoffs, and if he loses, that's basically it for him. So the implications of this are pretty huge. The only other one I wanted to mention was Erik plays Conor. Conor's red hot. Erik has been pretty steady. This is the only matchup of two playoff teams. Curious to see how it goes.
Yeah, absolutely. Conor really needs this win to, I think, really have a shot at a bye or securing a top 3 or 4 seed. And I mean, the way the competition is playing right now, Erik's going to lose pace to that bye if he doesn't win. So, or of the top seed. So we'll see what happens. These are going to be some interesting ones to watch. Are we ready to go over the results from last week's matchups? Because this was a fun one.
Yeah, you made a little bit of history here. You went 6-0.
Yes. I need to dig up the standings from last year. Last year I wrote this out all on a on the notes app on my Mac, and it's sitting somewhere here. And I'll see if I can go through it quickly. Yeah, this is the first time that one of us went 6-0. This is after I won 5-0-1 last week. So I have not picked an L in quite some time. Since week 14. You went 3-3. So we both picked myself, Ruthvik, and Erik to win. I picked Anthony to win. You picked EBO to win. Anthony won. I picked Conor to win. You picked Yuki to win. Conor won. I picked you to win. You picked Jake to win, and you won. So I guess you're not feeling too bad about that one. But regardless, it was very nice of me to go 6-0. And also, I believe there's some more history here. Let me see if I can double check this, or at least history for this year. Yeah, this is the first time all year that we have not there hasn't on our sheet we fill in ties as yellow, and a tie can include when we pick a team to win and they end up tying, or we pick a tie incorrectly. There's no yellow squares here. Everybody either lost or won, if we only picked the wins or losses.
Oh, very fun. Yeah, I maybe got to go back to my picking ties. Going back to that way, I got to be right about one of those sometime.
Yeah, no, you would think so. But all right, so I am now on the season. I wonder if this changes who's in the leagues. I think it might.
It does, as a matter of fact.
Oh, all right. So I am now 50. Cam's typing in the sheet. Is that what you're doing?
No, I'm not.
Oh, it looks like you're typing. A damn shame. All right, I'll try and do mental math. I am now 63, 32-1 if you convert the ties. Let me write that down because I'm gonna forget it. And you are now, oh, thank God, your ties is an even number. So you're 63, 33, and 0. So I am now a half game above you. It's been a while since that's happened. But
Yeah,
I think I'm ahead.
I think I've been ahead the entire season. Yeah, what this means though is that you get to pick first, which is new for this year.
Yeah, no, this is I like it. Last year I dominated you for most of the season, and ended up winning. Be nice to see if I could pull off a W here too. I'm hot in the fantasy world, hot here. It's fun. But all right, without further ado, I will pick myself to beat Daniel and Matt. I'm gonna make a hot take here too, and we can remember this, or see if we remember this. I think I'm gonna win 12-0. I think it's gonna be back-to-back 12-0 wins, over Daniel and Matt. I'm also now remembering I picked you to win 7-4-1 over Jake last week, so I came close there.
Not too bad.
Yeah, not too bad. I'm gonna pick you to beat Anthony. I'm gonna pick Andrew to beat Yuki. I don't know. I feel like that makes sense. I just I don't trust Yuki's team. All right. I'm picking Andrew. I'm gonna pick Jake to beat EVO. I'm gonna pick Ruthvik and Nick to beat Alex and Zach. And I'm gonna pick Erik to beat Conor. Yeah, I feel good about that.
Man, so my instinct is to just pick all of 6 of those the same, but now I'm losing, so I gotta pick something different. How about this?
You're only down half a game.
I'm down half a game. Let's say that Conor and Erik tie.
Oh, that's a bold one.
I think that'd be fun. Conor's team is playing as well as I've ever seen them play. Let's call that a tie. I need to pick more ties lately. And how about, I don't know, I've picked Yuki a lot ever since I noticed that Yuki was playing well. I've picked him a lot and I've been wrong every time. So I'm going to think that trend's going to continue, and I'm going to avoid picking Yuki this time and stick with Andrew. So really, we got very similar predictions this week, other than the Conor v. Erik.
Yeah, interestingly, the last time Andrew played Yuki, I picked Andrew to win. You picked them to tie, and Yuki won. So we'll see what happens. Maybe we're jinxing Andrew here. I'm not sure. But all right. That was episode 88. Is there anything you would like to add, Cam, before we hop off here?
No, week 16 is in the books. We're down to the final stretch, final 20% of the season. Still a lot up for grabs. We have no idea any combination of teams. Well, not any combination of teams, but there are a whole bunch of combinations of teams that could be the top 2. A whole bunch of teams could reasonably make that be in that 5-6 spot as well. It's just going to be great down the stretch. Maybe there will be some weird tiebreaker rules going on, and I just can't wait to see it all unfold.
Yeah, absolutely. It's going to be a fun one, as it always is. It is always fun here, not only in the Dynasty League, but also on the pitcher or the hitter, the podcast by the M-SABR Dynasty League for the M-SABR Dynasty League. And without further ado, goodbye.
There is never a lock in the fall down here as the big bull pours away. In the shutout, how will we know the great dog?
I don't know why I ended the podcast like that, but I kind of liked it.